What's up, beautiful people? Welcome to Jocz Productions. In this video, I'm going to quickly explain the influence of revolutionary ideals. First thing to note is the impact of the revolution will be felt both domestically and there will be a global impact to the American Revolution. One thing that happened as a result of the American Revolution was an increased awareness of inequalities in society. In particular, people will increasingly question the colonial elite and the power they had. All this talk about natural rights, consent of the governed, and individual rights made various individuals and groups question things beyond just the relationship between the colonies and Britain. For instance, following the American Revolution, there was a movement to abolish slavery, at least in states outside the North. In many cases, the call to end slavery in northern states was inspired by the ideals of the American Revolution. As you can see from this map, various states in the North began to gradually abolish slavery in the North. And by 1800, slavery was pretty much gone from most northern states. In contrast, the invention of the cotton gin and southern reliance on cash crops and slave labor will mean that slavery will expand in the South. I wonder if this is going to be a problem. Foreshadowing. What is interesting to look at is the fact that an estimated 20,000 African American soldiers fought for the British during the American Revolution. For these individuals, they saw liberty and independence on the side of the British, not the patriot cause. One reason was Dunmore's proclamation issued in 1775. In 1775, British Royal Governor of Virginia, John Murray, 4th Earl of Dunmore, promised freedom to enslaved people and indentured servants who ran away and fought for the British. Many African Americans fought for the British, thinking it would be their best shot at freedom. But sadly, these promises would not be kept once the British lost the war. In spite of the fact that more African American soldiers would fight for the British side during the American Revolution, between 5,000 to 8,000 African American soldiers fought for the patriot cause as well. And while the ideas and arguments found in the Declaration of Independence were not intended to be meant for many groups in American society, sadly, groups and individuals such as Frederick Douglass would use the ideals and arguments found in documents such as the Declaration of Independence in their struggle at advancing opportunities and rights in American society. Another way the American Revolution impacted the new nation was by increasing calls for greater political democracy in the new state and national government. Each former colony had to create a new state constitution. Some state legislatures made it easier to vote. For instance, in Pennsylvania, property requirements were eliminated for white male voters in states such as Pennsylvania. Not all states would do this, and many states would keep property requirements for voting, even for the white dudes. You can see in this graphic, many states would not abolish property requirements for voting until the 1820s and 1830s. But this democratization will begin following the American Revolution as more and more white male citizens, with or without property, are able to vote. One thing that did happen in all states were states eliminated titles of nobility. There would be no aristocrats or nobility in the new republic. And freedom of religion was a part of most, if not all, of the new state constitutions. Remember, the Great Awakening dramatically increased the number of religious denominations, so no one religion was given priority over the others in the new republic. Not to mention, many state governments included limits to power, checks and balances, separation of powers, all these things that you'll learn about in your government class. The lives of women were also impacted by the American Revolution. You might recall women participated in various ways both before and during the American Revolution. Groups like the Daughters of Liberty were essential in supporting the non-importation agreements. These economic boycotts of British goods were a powerful tool of colonial protest, and women were vital to their success. During the war, women often assumed control of the home front. Women ran the farm, the home, and the businesses. And women also played the role of helping supply the Continental Army. Women served as spies, camp followers, bandaged wounds, and there were even a few women who dressed up like dudes and fought. Enlightenment ideals and the appeals of women for expanded roles in the new nation also influenced life in post-revolution America. Women heard these calls for liberty, independence, and denouncements of tyranny and applied them to their own situation. Following the war, the ideal of Republican motherhood gained popularity. Republican motherhood was the idea that women should teach Republican values within the family, well, at least to their sons, since they will be the ones who will eventually be able to vote in the new republic. The idea was that women in their role as mothers would teach their sons to be good citizens who were civic-minded. Now, this may seem rather insignificant. What, a woman's only purpose is to be a mother? But this idea of Republican motherhood meant that women did have an elevated role in American political culture. At the very least, women needed access to education so that they can be better equipped to educate their children. Quick side note, I think this painting might feature one of the first mullet haircuts in human history. In 1848, during the Seneca Falls Convention, women would use the rhetoric of the American Revolution to condemn the unlimited powers many husbands had over their wives and called for full equality for women, not just the Republican motherhood stuff. Women reformers asked the very logical question: if kings and parliament shouldn't have unlimited power, why the heck should men and husbands? The fact that this meeting had to be held in 1848 demonstrates that the lives of women were not radically altered by the American Revolution, but there were changes in the lives of women nonetheless. And as mentioned, it was not just in America that the revolution will have an impact. Both England and America had Georges. While that's not important, what was amazing to many was the fact that the colonists did not European 2.0 this thing. What was established after the American Revolution was a republic, not another monarchy. Countries such as France, Haiti, and various other spots in Latin America were inspired by the ideals set forth in the Declaration of Independence and the colonial cause during the revolution. In many of these places, there would be independence movements or revolutions that will take place following 1783. We will see the French Revolution in 1789 using many of the same Enlightenment ideas to justify the overthrow of the monarch King Louis XVI, and the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen was inspired by Enlightenment thought and the statements found in the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson himself even helped with some of this document that helped state the values of the French Revolution. Things like inalienable rights, consent to the governed, all those things the cool kids were talking about. The Haitian Revolution that began in 1791 would also be partially inspired by the American Revolution. You might remember when the French got kicked out of North America, they did still retain some colonies in the Western Hemisphere. Haiti was a French colony in which the majority of the people were enslaved, and in 1791, a revolt erupted. Toussaint L'Ouverture became a leader of this anti-colonial and anti-slave revolt, and in Haiti, that little spot in the red would be the only slave uprising that would lead to the creation of a country that not only abolished slavery, but would be run by non-white and formerly enslaved individuals. Decolonization movements around the world will utilize the language of the American Revolution, and particularly the Declaration of Independence, to justify their own independence movements. Throughout the early 19th century, various Latin American countries would declare their independence as well. Simón Bolívar was inspired by Enlightenment ideas and the American Revolution in his fight against Spanish control over various Central and South American countries. And in our next video, I will take a look at our first national government, the Articles of Confederation. Until next time, thank you so much for watching Jocz Productions. Have a beautiful day. Peace.